بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم أما بعد. To continue in the study of Asul al-Fiqh from the book written by Shaykh Al-Hakami rahimahullah. Last week we discussed the topic of Ahkam al-Taklifiyya, and we mentioned that Ahkam al-Taklifiyya, what it is that basically it is called this since it is seek from the slave to do these acts. Now, that request of it being seek from the slave falls into 5 things. One of them is wajib, another one is mandub or mustahab, and then there's muharram and makruh and mubah. These are the 5 things that act can fall under. So it is seek from the slave to do so, and we gave examples regarding that, and we explained the different definition of wajib, mandub, muharram, makruh, and mubah. And we discussed that last week. As for today, we will discuss a different type of ruling or rules, and they're called Ahkam al-Wad'iyya, Ahkam al-Wad'i. And these rulings are rulings which a legislator has placed, meaning Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed these rulings, for whether they be from different attributes and signs, to prove the validity or the absence of something. To prove the validity or absence of something. Example, the author, he mentions here that there are 6. And today inshallah we'll take 3, since this topic at times may become confusing to some of the brothers. So we'll discuss it very slowly. So these ahkam, these rulings which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed, there are different attributes or signs which proves the validity of something or the absence of something. And with the examples, we'll come to know them. As for them, then there are 6 as the author mentions. The first of them that he mentions is as-sabab. As-sabab, which could translate to be translated as means or a reason for something. So the scholars of Usul, they define as-sabab as that which, if it is present, then the affair that we are discussing must also be present. And if it is absent, and if not, meaning if this affair is absent in of itself, then the affair is also not present. To clarify this, what he's saying as sabab is that if this affair is present, if this thing is present, then the affair must also be present. And if not, then the affair itself is not present. What does that mean? An example of that is the sun setting. The setting of the sun is a sabab, a reason for breaking the fast. So if we look at the definition now, we say if the sun is present, the sun setting occurs, then the breaking the fast also occurs. It's permissible to break the fast. But if the sun setting does not occur, then it is not permissible to break the fast. So this is a reason for breaking the fast, meaning the setting of the sun. Allah has placed the setting of the sun a reason for breaking the fast. So when the sun sets, breaking the fast is present. And if the sun does not set, then the breaking the fast is not allowed. Similarly, another example is the example of killing. The scholars give this example. What they intend by this is that if this reason of someone is killed, then that obligates al-qisas, which is retaliation. And if one is not killed, then retaliation of itself is not present. So we find that killing is a means or a reason for the obligation of al-qisas. If it is present, and when it becomes present, then al-qisas also becomes present. But if not, then the sabab, the reason is not there, so that for that reason, the qisas is not present. So with these 2 examples, if we look at it, Allah has made the sun setting a means or a reason for breaking the fast, being allowed, as He has made killing a reason or a means for retaliation. So this is what as-sabab means. It means that if this affair is present, such as the setting of the sun, then that, in the example we gave, breaking the fast also present. But if not, then the affair is also not present. Then the author mentions the second one, or when he mentions, the author then mentions, it is 2 types. One, that which enters under one's capability, and that which does not. So example of this is such as stealing. Stealing, if you were to steal, it has become a means and a reason for your hand to be cut. If you steal with the rules and the conditions applied, that the legislation has applied, if you're to do so, then it occurs that also the reason has been met for your hand to be cut. Now, this is in one's capability. He either steals or he does not steal. It's in his capability. As for the second type, which is not in one's capability, it's like the setting of the sun. You have no, you're not capable of when the sun sets or when it does not set. That's not in your hands, that's in Allah's hands. So this is what the author intends. So as-sabab is that which if present, the affair must also be present, and if not, then in of itself the affair is not present. So if it is absent, then the affair is also not present. Number two, and these affairs that we're discussing now, when you go to the books of the scholars, it becomes important. Because you'll find that the scholars say, example, this affair is sabab, the sabab for this affair is so and so. The sabab for this affair is such and such. So if you're to understand this point, that what they intend is that if this affair is present, then if this sabab is present, then the affair is also present. And if not, then it's not present. If you have to understand it like this and try to clarify more with these examples that were given, then you understand what they intend when they discuss this in the books of fiqh. The second one he mentions is ash-shart, which is a condition. And many of us know ash-shart. Example, we say shurutul salah, the conditions of the prayer. Shurutul wudu, the conditions of wudu. The conditions of such and such act of worship. This, as we've come across this much. But what does it mean? It means that it is that which is, if present, it does not necessitate the presence of the affair. But if absent, then the affair is not present. What does this mean? Example, from the conditions of the prayer is wudu. From the condition of the prayer is wudu. Does that mean that every time you make wudu, you must pray? No. So if wudu is present, example, wudu is present, it does not necessitate that prayer must be present. If the condition, which is wudu, is present, it does not necessitate that you must pray. But if wudu is absent, then you cannot pray. This is what is intended. So if you have wudu, it does not mean you have to pray. Example, you may make wudu before sleeping. It does not mean you have to pray. You may make wudu just to, example, you broke your wudu, you've already prayed and you broke your wudu, you just made wudu to be in a state of wudu. It does not mean you have to pray. So a shart, a condition, does not mean that if you met the condition or if you came with the condition that you must fulfill. Rather, you can fulfill it at a later time. It is not necessary you must fulfill it right now. Now, the condition is two types. One is that of obligation and that one is that of correctness. As for of obligation, then example, we know from the conditions which make an act obligatory upon an individual in Islam, from it is al-Islam, from it is al-bulugh, reaching the age of puberty, and from it is al-intellect. These are shurut al-wujub, conditions of obligation. If you have these conditions, you've met these conditions, then the act of worship is obligatory upon you. Then the act of worship is obligatory upon you. That does not have an effect on the acceptance or non-acceptance. For example, someone who is under the age of puberty, he is Muslim and he has intellect and he prays. It does not mean that his prayer is not accepted, for it could be accepted, it may not be accepted. But that which obligates the action upon him is that if he reaches these conditions, then the acts are obligatory upon him. As for shurut al-sihha, the shurut of correctness of the prayer, then if we take the example of the prayer as well, or the conditions of correctness, or we take the example of prayer, then from the correctness, the conditions for the correctness of the prayer is the entrance of the time. And as I mentioned before, as Shaykh Al-Afghanee mentioned, the most important of the conditions of the prayer is the entrance of the time. Meaning that if the time is not entered for the prayer, and you are to pray, then your prayer does not count. But if the time of the prayer entered, and you met all the conditions, and you prayed, then your prayer counts. So the condition, the shart, is outside of an act of worship. You must fulfill those conditions before you do the act of worship. So if this condition is present, does not mean that you have to, example, pray. But if it is absent, then you cannot pray. If we're using prayer as an example. So it is that which if present does not necessitate the presence of the affair. But if not but if it is absent, then the affair is not present. So this is what it means by conditions. Conditions are that which are outside of the act of worship. You must fulfill those conditions for the prayer to be accepted, for the act of worship to be accepted. So every act of worship has conditions, and they have to be met. And the third one we'll discuss is al-mani'. Al-mani' is that which prevents an act of worship from being accepted. So if the mani', that which prevents, is present, then the affair is absent. But if absent, it does not necessitate its presence or absence. An example of al-mani' is al-hayd, menstruation for the woman. For it prevents the performance of the prayer and fasting. And it prevents one from being able to have intercourse with or marital relations with his family. So if al-hayd, example, is present, her menstrual cycle is present, her prayer is not correct. If this affair is present, which is menstruation in this example, then if this is present, then the correctness of the prayer is not there, nor is the correctness of fasting, or nor is it permissible to have marital relations with the family. So this al-mani'. So if one were to look at these three, he will say that as-sabab is a reason that Allah has placed for something. If that reason is present, then that affair is also present. So if we're to say, example, that the time of dhuhr is a reason for salatul dhuhr to be present, then yes, we could say it's a sabab. And if it is not present, it is absent, then the affair is not present. So if dhuhr is not entered in, the time of dhuhr, the sun is not past the zenith, then we could say that salatul dhuhr is not entered. That there's no sabab for salatul dhuhr. There's no reason for the prayer of salatul dhuhr at this time. So between a sabab and sharat condition, there are some affairs which enter into one another, as the scholars mentioned. But what distinguishes a sabab from a shart is that if this affair is present, then if the sabab is present, then the affair must also be present. So if we take example al-dhuhr, salatul dhuhr, if al-dhuhr, the time of dhuhr is present, then the salatul dhuhr is present. You can pray at any time during the salatul dhuhr. As for shart, if salatul dhuhr, the sun passes and the time of the prayer enters, does not mean that you have to pray right away. It does not mean that you have to pray right away. That's where distinguishing between the two. That's why we say if the affair is present in the shart, in regards to condition, if the affair is present, it does not necessitate the presence of the affair. If the shart, the condition, is present, it does not necessitate the presence of the affair. I mean, the time of the prayer could enter, but it does not necessitate you pray right away. It does not necessitate you pray right away. Or example, it does not necessitate that the prayer be prayed at that time. For it occurs at times that one joins the prayers. One joins the prayers and other than this. And al-mani' is simple. Al-mani' is that which prevents. If the mani', the preventative affair is present, then the act is absent. Then the act of worship is absent. So example, in the case we mentioned, menstruation. If a woman is menstruating, then it prevents her from performing the prayer and performing fasting. It's an affair which prevents her from performing the act of worship. Similarly, the scholars mention, example, killing one you're going to inherit from prevents you from inheriting from him. It is a mani'. So these are affairs, when one looks into the books of fiqh and study and reads them, and he sees somewhere that the scholar mentions that this affair is a shart. What is it? If you do not come with this affair before the act of worship, then the act of worship is not present. It is not accepted. Or example, he comes across a statement of a scholar which says this is al-mani'. I mean, this prevents the acceptance of that worship. Or this is a preventative affair. So it's important for us to identify these affairs. So when you look into the books of fiqh, it is easier for you to understand them. it is easy for you to understand what is intended by that scholar. Allah knows best. We'll stop with this and continue next week in regards to the topic of Usul al-Fiqh, inshaAllah.